Links of the video are in the description, so if you want to take a look at some of the videos I watched, you can go ahead and look below and check them out if that's what you want to see, some good content that I watched on YouTube. It's basically my playlist on my way to Reno. Yeah, alright, enjoy.
Video going to Reno, me and the missus here. She's upset because I lagged like hell. But we're on our way and we're about to have some fun on the road. So I'm talking about, I don't know, training, random things. Sort of a vlog, but very informative because I'll be watching YouTube videos and I don't know, sometimes I want to talk about training. My wife will probably, Naomi will probably chime in, right babe? As we talk about training. So.
Jesus Christ.
I just watched two videos about with Jason Blaha, the skinny on dietary fat, and the other one was Carbophobes. And I just want to talk about nutrition and supplements. I don't really talk about this much that often. And I kind of have I've dug very deep into the nutrition hole, listening to podcasts, reading books, watching videos, and getting information. And my general take on nutrition is that, let's start with supplements. Supplements is really something that you should do if you are lacking stuff. So like typically if you're a caloric deficit, you're trying to cut for like a meet or something, or you're trying to just do a bodybuilding show, or just lose weight in general, supplements are really important because they allow you to get more nutrition without calories, essentially getting more calorie dense nutritionally dense foods. Nutritionally? Is that even a word? Anyways, the other thing too is that when you're trying to get, like, say, as much protein as you want, sometimes some of the protein sources you have available, let's say guitar chicken breast, having the flexibility of eating other protein sources, like just say a protein whey shake, is going to help. It's going to make it easier. When it comes to like percentages of carbs, protein, and fat, I really think it's sort of, if you're maintenance calories or even in the surplus, or just say maintenance, okay? Nutrition percentages don't matter nearly as much as I think people make them out to be, because what it comes down to is, like, for example, building muscle, right, or maintaining muscle, is that, you know, you want to have about 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. That's kind of the formula I go by, or I do 0.8 grams per pound of body weight. Just kind of gives you a rough estimate of how much protein you have. And there's lots of stuff out there that's saying you don't even need that much, or you need more than that. And generally, if you're in a caloric maintenance or caloric surplus, your body's going to manufacture what it needs. And getting the protein requirement is going to help make sure that you get everything you need and you're able to build. But then if you're, let's say, in a deficit, well, you're not going to have enough, so you want to have more protein to ensure that you're basically going over those requirements. Also, the other thing too is, I remember like with those two videos that I watched, it just kind of, it can get kind of confusing because the videos are relatively short. I mean, 5 to 7 minutes is not a really short YouTube video, but I mean, when it comes to nutrition, it's very easy for things to get out of context, because a lot of the time, you know, people are afraid of kind of carbophobes, right? I read that one, I listened to that one, and just kind of looking at the title, I was like, yeah, I used to be carbophobic, and you should be carbophobic if you don't exercise, if you don't train hard, because typically people who eat too much carbs will just gain a ton of weight. There's lots of reasons why carbs tend to be bad for people who are sedentary, because lack of physical activity. Now, but if you train hard, you really don't have anything to worry about, because you're going to use that fuel. Now, of course, if you want to be leaner and you want to cut and you want to get shredded or whatever, or just lose some body fat, you're going to have to like eat less. You're just going to have to adjust your carbohydrate intake, because usually carbohydrates have a tendency to increase appetite and cause you to eat more food. Let's do Powerlifting to Win. Really great video. It talks about Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill. And it's a great book, and I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about it because I have similar interests apparently as Izzy, as I didn't realize. It's kind of neat. I love his energy. Anyways, link in the description if you haven't seen it. But it kind of talks about what it means to kind of think like Jesus. And not so much in the sense thinking like Jesus, think in the manner in which you want to become. Kind of taken from the book Think and Grow Rich. And what I mean by that is kind of like also Michael Jordan. Think about all the famous people in history, whether it be sports or politics or leadership. These are people that have accomplished really big goals, and the reason why they accomplished big goals is because they acted in a certain way. And the big reason why we watch these YouTube videos and we watch, you know, we read books, and we just try to essentially get something that we don't have, try to become something we don't have. And I kind of want to just like talk about like what I got from the book, and kind of one of the things that I'm reminded of that Izzy talked about was that if you take action and you do something, it will become you. Because ultimately, you know, that the cliche saying is, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And I truly believe in that, because sometimes we get caught up in so much of our thoughts, you know. And it's funny that he mentioned Elliott, Hulse, and bioenergetics, but I mean, we get so caught up in our own thoughts that it kind of freezes us, or it messes with our ability to do better. Because the reality is, like, I mean, think about this for a second. Like, if you didn't know how much weight was on the bar, how much stronger would you be? How much faster would the bar move? I mean, under most circumstances, I mean, in a perfect situation, you wouldn't know what the weight is. I mean, it'd be close to your max, maybe. It just depends. But I do know it makes an effect on how you're going to live. It's such a huge psychological mind fuck. And the reason why is, like, you know, this is kind of another thing that reminds me also of Ed Cohen, you know, the greatest of all time powerlifter. He talked about when he would train with a training partner, the guy that he would train with, his coach, or whether just a training partner, they'd put the weight on the bar, they'd pick numbers for him. He really never knew what was on the bar. And I'm just thinking, you know, all this stuff is starting to kind of come together when it comes to, like, trying to become good at powerlifting, trying to become good at business, good at your life, or just trying to get more out of everything. And, you know, I really recommend you look at the video, because Izzy has some really great stuff. I think I love his energy. You know, I don't always agree with everything he says, but, you know, again, it's just really just, you know, because a lot of why you're watching this video is because you either want to learn what I'm learning, you want to get some information from me, a formative video, who knows. All we know is that we all want to get better, and doing what, or thinking in a manner at which someone has done before, like Abraham Lincoln, thinking in that way, or in a sense trying to become somewhat similar to Abraham Lincoln or Michael Jordan, or just becoming one of those heroes of great that you believe in, that you trust and you believe, and that's kind of who you aspire to be. I think is a big part. How would Michael Jordan feel if he was going to take the last shot? You know, imagine this: they're playing basketball. You're shooting a basket at the buzzer, right? It's you know, this is the game-winning shot. How does Michael Jordan feel when he shoots the ball? And just kind of thinking about that for a second. You know, when I'm about to deadlift for a PR, how does Dan Green think? You know, and that's kind of cool. Like, when I really put that in perspective, it's just like, you know, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I'm just different, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of like, I'm about to do let's just say 535 deadlift, which I have never really done in training. I've done it in meet, but never done in training. I'm wondering if I could think like that next time. How does Dan Green lift? I usually think like this. I usually think in the sense of, I imagine how he sets up. I think about how Mark Bell sets up, because that's kind of how I learned my kind of praying to the gods before a deadlift. And then recently I kind of sort of copied the breathing of Mass Aesthetics, Garrett. I kind of like that, because you take a big breath of air and you really get some pressure in there. Anyways, check out the video if you haven't already. Comment below. Interview with PTC Powerlifting. This is an interview I watched or listened to with him, I think in Australia. Talked about the lats. It's a really long video, so I'll just make a bunch of snippets, but he talked about how having big lats allow for you to be able to control the deadlift better. Of course, this is obvious, but one cool thing that just, you know, hearing these little things really help in training, and kind of where to put your focus, because that's the big fun of it. It's kind of deciding what your focus is and trying to decide on kind of like what you need more work on as you get stronger, or as you try to refine your form, or just build muscle and strength. When he talked about how the lats, the bigger your lats, the more you're going to be able to control. Basically, you can allow the weight to stay in front of you and have control. The bigger your lats, you're going to be able to make it so that if it does get in front of you, like out of position, you're going to be able to tolerate it better. You're going to be able to have more room to stabilize at the shoulder and strengthen the upper back and keep everything nice and strong. He talked about lifting like a bodybuilder for years before he got into powerlifting or started competing. That's the sumo deadlifts, and he said that he was pulling conventional like around 600 and 300 kilos, and then when he went to sumo, he worked himself up to being able to lift 240 kilos, pretty much a significant difference. And he spent several 6-week cycles before he finally was able to feel like he was getting the hang of the sumo deadlift. He would do one 6-week cycle and make very little progress, and then I guess he would stop, and then he would do another 6-week cycle. And they said by the third 6-week cycle, he felt like he was getting the hang of it and started to build up. And I'm just like thinking, you know, I've never actually even gave the sumo deadlift 6 weeks. I've only given it like a week or two here. I tried to do it I did it for 3 weeks. I just get so frustrated because my sumo deadlift skill technique is so bad that, you know, I'm a strong deadlifter, especially for how long I've been lifting. But I mean, just think about this for a second. I mean, I just can't get above like 450 with a sumo deadlift. I mean, it's ridiculous. Whereas on the other day, I just did, you know, 3 sets of 5 with 465. It's just, I don't know. Just kind of some interesting thoughts about kind of being patient with powerlifting, getting stronger, building muscle. Excuse me. What did Chip say?
Yourself. It's actually so much better than thinking about competing with other people. You get more successful that way. Just, you know.
When you compete against yourself?
You compete against yourself.
And
this is kind of a negative way of looking at it, but I think that competing against yourself is a reason, or for me, I speak for myself. The reason why I compete against myself is because everyone is better than me. So it kind of, I'm not trying to beat another person because they're just so hard to beat and I can't really see incremental progress, but I can beat myself. I can get better. That's kind of how I look at it.
No, actually, even in business, like I've learned recently that, like, you know, you can't really be better than everybody else. Like, there's so many people in this world that, I mean, it's in real estate.
Right.
You know, there's so many people that are so much better than everyone else. It's ridiculous. So there's really, you know, it's almost impossible to be better than everyone else, every real estate agents. But the only thing that you can work on is actually getting better yourself. You know, training in a way where you.
Oh, the Bunny
better.
Ranch.
Nice.
We should stop there.
That's interesting. Where's that at?
Deficits, sumo pulls. Dan Green was talking about why would you make an exercise more difficult, like a deficit, if you can't do the technique right? The best way to do sumo deadlifts, to learn them, to get the technique down, it's to lift from blocks. And then once you get the technique down, then you can bring the bar lower to the ground. That way you can really get the technique down. One of the most challenging things for me as a powerlifter, as a strength athlete, as someone who just loves to lift weights, when it comes to the squat, bench, and deadlift, is being able to have proper mobility, of course, you know this already, but more importantly, the viewpoint I kind of want you to take, I want to share with you, is the idea that when you squat, bench, deadlift, an empty bar, or even a bar with, let's say, a plate on each side, the form, the technique should be as efficient as possible. It should be exactly as if you're competing. And I think sometimes with a lot of newer lifters and people that I train sometimes, not necessarily powerlifters, but just people who are lifting weights, maybe they've been lifting for a while, maybe they just haven't been taking it very seriously, but it's almost like the weight, they'll say something like the weight's too light, right? So you can't have good form. That doesn't make any sense, because if you want to lift the weight that's light, you should be able to have the same sound technique. So like one big example of me, what makes my mobility so bad is that I can't squat with good mobility, mainly because of my hips and my ankles. But if you put enough weight on my back, it's easier for me to go straight down. Whereas when there's a small amount of weight on my back, just like a little plate on each side, one of the biggest challenges I have is being able to go straight down so the bar path is perfectly straight. Essentially, it's almost like my technique is going to change when I go from 135 to 315, and this is simply not the case. This is not how it should be. You're going to want to be able to really refine your technique in a way where you have the best technique, and this is how you kind of know technique is good. Or like, if you look at just an example, look at some of the best deadlifters, some of the best bench pressers and squatters, and they're hitting a max temp, right? And sometimes you'll see a grinder, but often it's almost like most of the time there's not a lot of grinding. It's almost like the weight was too light, you know? That's kind of what it looks like. It's almost, I mean, of course they struggled, it was probably their max, but understand that their technique is so sound that even though they're doing a max effort on a powerlifting meet, they are actually giving the best possible technique. And this is something that I heard from Dan Green also. He talked about how, you know, using the weight to put yourself in position is really not a good long-term strategy. If you have to use the weight to put yourself in position, it's just not a good way to look at it. He also said, what else did he say to someone that was really important? He said something about, oh yeah, he said, like Sparkle, his wife was telling her, was saying, like, it looks like you weren't even struggling at some of his lifts, right? And then he said, you know, he's using the best possible technique on the lift. So there's nothing wrong with technique, it's just not strong enough, because the technique will make it so that it's easier. So if you're using the best possible technique, you're going to lift the weight faster and better. Now, of course, if you have certain muscles that are stronger than others, certain stances or positions will benefit. Like, for example, I have a strong lats, I have a strong back, so what happens is I can kind of get away with a little bit of bad form because of my poor mobility. In reality, if I had better mobility, which basically means stronger hamstrings and mobile hamstrings, as well as more mobile hips, I'll be able to get in a more optimal position and pull more weight, or pull the same amount of weight with more reps. If you've seen a video of me doing 465 for 3 sets of 5, I posted recently, it's almost, you see me pitch forward quite a bit, especially in the sideways video, and that's a lot of room that I'm leaving on the table where I can actually really make significant improvements if I can figure that out. And it's definitely going to take time. It's a lot of mobility, it's a lot of practice, but just kind of a thought process I got from listening to the art of learning talking about how you need to know what it's supposed to feel like, the movement, the perfect technique, and I think that's like really, really important. I think one thing about that video I did, the 465 for 3 sets of 5, is I did 315 and I made the weight super light. It looked really good. I mean, that's kind of like what made me feel good about that workout was when I got up a warm-up set of 315, it was super fast, and then I did a kind of a last warm-up set of 425 for a double. I thought I was going to do a triple, but it was just super fast. I felt I was in the right position, perfect position, and that's what you're striving for when you're trying to improve your technique. Tangent on that previous segment, but what I was trying to, I guess the one thing I did want to close with that I forgot to mention was that good flexibility, good movement is the foundation for all your lifts. If you have to use weight to put yourself in position, there's a good chance you're just gonna you're setting yourself up a foundation that's very unstable. It's going to cause you to injure yourself in the future, and you don't want that. You want your technique to be sound at 135. That's the same as 315. And of course, when you get to 90%, there's going to be some form degradation no matter what. But basically, anything below 80%, maybe 75, you should be able to have absolute perfect form. And again, I know this is easier said than done, but this is kind of the philosophy that I've got. Athletes, the best lifters, the best basketball players, golfers, football players, all these guys, right? All these people that are high-level athletes or even high-level leaders, right? And CEOs, and politicians and whatnot, they make what they do look easy. And to the untrained eye, this is what he says in The Art of Learning, it's almost like you can't really see what's happening unless you understand the sport. There's so much stuff that's happening so fast, but because it's part of their being. Just think about when Michael Jordan shoots a basket, or Tiger Woods hits a golf ball. It's all very, very consistent. It's very hard to see what they're doing because they're so good at it. And the people that are really good at it, it's almost like it's very difficult to really see what they're doing unless you've done a lot of it yourself. So if you've deadlifted a ton, a lot of reps, and you see someone deadlift a lot of weight, and you'll be able to see all the little small things. This kind of reminds me of the story when I got into martial arts just for a very short stint. I learned Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I learned it wasn't for me, it wasn't my thing, but after I got like 2 classes with a one-on-one coach for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, learning about elbow escapes and just kind of all these things, and then I would watch a UFC fight, it was like the whole world was open to me. I saw exactly what they were doing on the mat. I know what they were trying to do. It was kind of weird. It's like I connected the dots. That's why they're holding their hands like that. That's why their elbows are like that. I mean, it didn't take very much because, you know, obviously I've been lifting and exercising for a long time, so you kind of see and feel these things, and that's kind of what the best athletes do. They're able to translate, they're very good with their body. They're able to physically translate whatever it is they're doing with their body and seeing kind of, I guess basically seeing the matrix. Like when I say seeing the matrix, I relate this a lot to Kelly Starrett, the mobility WOD, flexibility and injury, form checks and whatnot. When I see people, it's almost like I can see everything that's wrong or everything that's not working the way it should, or not working optimally. And sometimes for me, it's really hard to really articulate what I want to say. I mean, one of the things I'm not very good at is like with K-Star and some of these guys that have physical therapists, have degrees, have much more experience than me, are better at articulating. So that's why when I make videos, I try not to be like, to pretend to be super smart or pretend to like know all these big words. I just try to speak from experience because in truth, because I'll say wrong terms a lot. I'll say like breaking up fascia, like someone commented on that. It's like, you don't really break up fascia. What I should really be saying is that you're trying to restore sliding surfaces, and that's kind of trying to restore the tissue to normal. So anyways, that was just kind of like a little internalization and refinement is much more important than the quantity that is learned. This is the concept that in The Art of Learning, Josh Waitzkins talks about making smaller circles. It's about getting better at a specific type of strategy, a type of movement. Smaller circles, meaning you can't see it happening. And this is kind of what I related to in the previous segment. I said was, you can't really see what they're doing. It's like magic. They hit the golf ball and it goes where it needs to go. They deadlift 900 pounds and it goes where it needs to go. I mean, of course, I think one of the funny things about this idea of smaller circles is my favorite deadlifts and the ones I love is with grinders. They're like the coolest thing to watch, and it's because it's someone overcoming adversity. It's like someone who's almost going to fail, who is basically dancing on a tightrope 1,000 feet in the air. Maybe not quite like that, but just the idea of being that close to failure, and if you do fail, it's a big deal. And when you're deadlifting, squatting, or let's say squatting, and you have like a bunch of weight on your back that's like bigger than you've ever attempted, grinding it is cool, but the truth is the best make smaller circles. They're able to refine their movement in such a way that their technique is perfect. And the only way their technique is perfect is because these powerlifters, these big guys, Dan Green, Eric Lillibridge, all these high-level powerlifters, Brandon Lilly, just all these guys that are super strong. You see them move, and part of it's they're very methodical with everything they do. And you kind of think about, like, if you're just getting into powerlifting, I thought I was a nerd with deadlift nerd, just trying to nerd out, trying to make a best deadlift. I just realized there are so many people out there. Just watching Powerlifting to Win, for example, he is so methodical in his movement. But if you think about it for a second, it's too obvious. Not that there's anything wrong with being obvious, because if the obvious people help you learn the fastest, because you see them, how they move, you see how Izzy sets up on a bench. It's very methodical. For someone who's 160 pounds trying to bench 265, 245 for reps, you see this guy and he has to set up perfectly. And why? Because he has to. Same thing with the squat, his deadlifts. I think for the bench is probably the hardest, obviously, because of body weight reasons, but just how methodical he is. But think about the best benchers, right? Or the best just of anything, right? You see them do something and the way they set up for it is so incremental, you can't even tell what they're doing. It becomes so natural. And it's almost like when you first start off in powerlifting, strength training, any sport, and before you get good at it, it's almost like you have to think about so many things. Like when you drive for the first time, right? The air conditioner's on, the radio. You can't change the radio station because you're so focused on the road. You have two hands on the wheel. You can't have one hand on the wheel. You can barely breathe correctly. Your seatbelt is on. You don't know where the gas pedal is. You don't know how much harder. But like so many little things. And then as you get better at it, driving becomes like nothing. And that's kind of the idea. When you're deadlifting 500 pounds, 600 pounds, it becomes like nothing. Now for me, deadlifting, I just like to use that because that's one of the main things I'm very refined at, as far as, in my opinion, for where I'm at, is that essentially for singles, anything below like 485, 465, I'm very refined and I got it down. I don't know, I just do. Like I can lift it on any day. You put it on the bar, I can pick it up. I can probably pick it up cold, and I probably shouldn't pick it up cold, but I could. I can probably pull 485 off the ground cold. I don't know, I think 495 is about my breaking point. 465 on any given day, right? But I might be a little overconfident. Definitely 465. I don't know about 485. But if I'm warmed up, yeah, 485 is nothing. But just some thoughts. I used to play Magic the Gathering or even StarCraft. I mean, I wasn't really an amazing player at any of these things, but I was decent enough. I played fairly competitive. I had some top fours and got some first place finishes at my local store. I mean, I wasn't a bad player. I wasn't amazing either, but one of the things that made me good and made me great at some of these things, or not great, but just good, was that I was really good at knowing what I had, meaning that the deck that I used or the strategy that I used, I was really good at it. And I was really good at it because I practiced with it. I mean, I knew the deck inside and out. I knew what I was going to draw. I knew the probability of what I needed. It's almost like I was one with the deck of cards. I knew exactly what I needed at almost any given point. It's something that takes a lot of time, and I think that's sort of like how it works for powerlifting, strength training. It's like you have to refine what you're really good at. And I just can't imagine how you can get really, really good at bench, really, really good at deadlift, really, really good at squat all at the same time during a training cycle. There's just too much to manage. Unless you have lots of time, because every time, one of the things that made me really good at deadlifting was that all I could think about was deadlifting. And when I trained, I would focus on my deadlift. It was just like I would try to focus on finding that right groove. Whereas with the bench and the squat was basically all over the place. I would still do my sets, but then the way I did deadlift was extremely methodical and very thoughtful. And relating this again to Magic the Gathering and StarCraft, like I knew the Protoss or Terran. That's actually a horrible StarCraft player, but my point is that I got really good at one thing, and that's what allowed me to excel. And if you really want to, magic show, okay. And if you really want to get well at something, get really good at something, you really have to put all your efforts, basically put all your eggs in one basket for an extended period of time, or maybe just a short period of time, 6 weeks, focus on something. That doesn't mean you're not going to do the other stuff you need to do, but it means that you're going to put an intense focus in improving rotator cuff ability. That's a new word, rotator cuff ability. But I mean, improving your rotator cuff strength, your shoulder mobility, something, and then find a way to measure it. How light does 405 feel? 405 feels ridiculously light for me. And it's just kind of like one of those things. Of course, as you go higher, everything changes, but I'm just saying, like, the best deadlifters, the best squatters and benchers, 225 is nothing, right? Bench press, squatting 315 is nothing. Deadlifting 405 is nothing, and these are nothing. They're nothing. They're nothing. I don't think I've said nothing. Profound mastery of what is considered a basic skill set. Profound mastery. What's that word? Profound. Impactful. profound, basic skill set. How much do you put emphasis on technique? Technique is everything. Maybe 95% of it. And once you have your technique solid, then you get stronger, right? Of course you do both at the same time, but let's say you're technical, you're really good technically, right? Then you need to focus on strength. Then you get really strong and your technical breaks down, then you focus on technique. Advantage in the bench press, benching using your lats, how does it work? There's a great video by Chris Duffin, freaking fantastic, talks about exploding with the bench using your lats and chest. And one of the biggest key things I took from the video was being able to keep the bar moving horizontal, because the bench is supposed to move in an arc. So if I'm benching, it's going to go straight up from the chest, or come up from here, and then kind of go up like this, right? And the reason why is because that's just the ideal position when you're raw benching. Now, talking about this idea is that you're flaring the lats and the elbows at the top to help move the bar horizontally. So you're not just going vertically going this way, you're also going up. So as the weight, when you're doing max loads for single reps or a 1 repetition max attempt, like at a meet, to get the most out of your bench, is being able to use that technique to your advantage to be able to flare up and go up like this. Because the thing about max attempts is like you're coming over your chest. I think this is my biggest problem, is that I press my chest up and I push and I get it, and then I'm still trying to push up and I'm not trying to push back aggressively enough. I still go back, I'm just not aggressive with it, which is why I think I missed my lockout. And you know what I just said? I just learned just now. I always knew it was a good reason for making this little video. Was awesome. Check the description. Man, I just learned something by just teaching. That was freaking cool. Because I need to explode off my chest, push straight up, and then back really aggressively. Dude, I think I just found my 315. Still haven't hit 315. Can you believe that shit?